They got him. They got him, man. The social media entity that is itself got Jake, and it's it's just me. And we we said we were calling people out. We said it's a whole new us in this new year, and we shouldn't have done that. Jake last episode said that science-based term is being weaponized, and people didn't like that, and now we're getting attacked, and he's gone. I don't know where he is. Oh, hold on, he's actually texting me right now. Oh gosh. Hey man, I actually have to do science and finish this PhD thing. LOL. Can't do recording this week. Oh, okay. Jake's okay. That's good. And as long as he's safe, and we actually did not get attacked by the social media people yet. No promises though. And unfortunately, what that does mean is it is just me today. So I apologize in advance. But as we did last time, it's going to be another filler episode. And as we kind of prefaced it, it's going to keep it short and sweet. Going to try to give some additional insight into the character development that is me. Perhaps give some practical wisdom, if you would, and advice and things that maybe have just been more relevant in my day and what we've talked about in previous episodes. So I think, yeah, like we left off on the last episode, we kind of prefaced the idea of just go do it, take some action, and importantly, just don't talk about it, be about it. And then it's true. It very much is. And that was something that maybe I was trying to say to myself even. And it's helpful to have that reminder. Because sometimes, again, it's tough to take that action. So I think that was kind of sitting with me throughout the week. And then I was watching an episode of Soul Eater, an anime. And it was an episode where, kind of put it briefly, so the main character, she was, main character in the group that is them. They were basically getting ready for this big battle and this thing that they have to face, this new enemy. And the teacher was like, "Hey, you guys are not strong enough. You need to first pass this test where you can really show where you're at in terms of your training and your levels and all that and your camaraderie. But if you can't, then you can't go on the mission and you can't do it." So they try it out. They're unsuccessful at first, and they're not able to do it. Everyone starts getting frustrated, as you do, because you're not able to, you're not going to be able to go on this mission. You're not going to be able to do what you like to do. And then people start pointing fingers. They start blaming one another. And the main character, Maka, she blatantly blames someone who is pretty easy to blame. I'd put it like that. Black Star character who is very outgoing, very in your face, and seems to always be joking around, right? And so it was easy enough to point the finger and say, "Hey, it's because of you that we're not able to succeed. You need to step it up. You need to focus, and we need to get stuff done." And then the teacher, professor, sensei, whichever you would, goes and says, "No, Maka, it's you. You're the one that's holding everyone back." And she's appalled by this, right? She is just kind of jaw drops, gets teared up, is upset, because again, no one likes to hear that, say, "Hey, this is your fault." No one likes to get called out. And she runs away and just kind of goes off into the woods and starts crying and sitting there alone, just thinking about it. Another friend comes over and just gently starts to talk to her, and they start discussing. And after a little bit of reflection, a little bit of guidance from the friend, she's like, "Damn, actually, yeah, I have been the one that's holding everyone back, and that sucks, and I don't like that, and I went ahead and blamed someone else, and that's not cool too." So went back to the group, said, "Hey, I messed up. It was actually my fault this whole time. We need to accomplish this goal. Let's do this together, whatever it takes. Let's get to it." Nice little happy moment. Everyone's excited, hugs exchange, and everyone, they're able to pass the test, essentially, right? They get to where they need to be and go on to the next level. They level up, essentially, right? Things we talked about in the past as well. And it was powerful, right? I think, again, given what we've talked about recently with just doing action and this whole new year, setting new goals and just trying to get stuff done, it was something that I could really resonate with, because I feel like it brings up that idea of it's actually you that is holding yourself back, right? And we can actually say that out loud. And if you can be honest with yourself and say that to yourself, it's powerful. It really is. And it's hard to say that. It's a hard topic in general, but I think it's extremely important, right? It's that idea that in the end, a lot of it comes down to ourselves, and it comes down to what we are doing, what we're not doing, things we're telling ourselves, if habits are good, if they're not, how to change. And it's tough. So I think it was it was nice to get that little reminder from anime. It's so cool how we can always learn from that. And I tried to put it in a way that was very specific to me and where I'm at, and how, again, maybe I am holding myself back a lot more than what I think. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, is trying to get that idea of, okay, how, like, why do we hold ourselves back, right? We want to be successful. We have these goals. There are things that we want to do, but why is it that we're often our biggest enemy? And that's something I've talked about in the past before, right? In the kind of reflection of 2024 and also the goals for 2025. I'm just in my own way way too much, man. And I think it's very common, right? But it's also something I feel like people aren't too open about, because it is very tough to talk about. And I'm going to struggle. I am kind of struggling now when I speak about it here, but I'm going to try. And I think I want to at least provide some insight into what I'm thinking about, how I'm planning to navigate it, what that looks like in specifics, and just kind of be very upfront and honest about it, right? Because I feel it can be beneficial, if not to other people, at least to myself, because I'm just doing more reflection. And I think that's where it kind of comes down to and starts with. It's just, why am I doing this? Right. So I think one place to start is why does anyone go and experience this feeling of, I'm holding myself back? It's not something we intentionally do, right? Again, because we want to get to this end goal. But I think it's something that inherently is just subconscious, and it ends up happening. And it's potentially even a mechanism, a coping mechanism of sorts, where you're feeling off in some way. You're sad. You're not happy with what your goals are, whatever it is, frightened. And it's that feeling initial starts, and then you start to feel like you need to change. But change is something that humans don't like. And I think that's a big part of it, right? Is that doing different things is scary. It's that fear of being uncomfortable. It's that fear of facing yourself, of facing things that you're not used to, being bad at things, of quote unquote failing, right? I think this fear in general then creates this effect where we need to do something to avoid it. We need to not feel this fear. We not feel this bad feeling of whatever it is. And the body and the mind are very good at protecting itself and prioritizing that safety, that comfort, right? So maybe we start telling ourselves that these things that we feel like are in the short term, they help us, right? And we start doing those things that are protecting us. But that's just in the short term, right? And we go through this potential cycle where it's, okay, negative feeling arises, this fear, this uncertainty. Let me avoid this. So let me just not think about it. Let me just not do the action that I kind of need to do to get to that end goal. And then let me just not do it. So, wow, now I feel really good because I avoided that feeling. And that cycle then repeats, right? Oh, bad feeling comes up. Avoid it by not doing it. Avoid that feeling by not doing the action. And then feel good. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And that becomes, again, kind of an unconscious thought, an unconscious action, and that's just kind of the norm. And we get stuck in that cycle, right? You could put that in any context too. So kind of to give a little more specific example of just going to the gym. This is something I faced myself too, and something that we talked about in like episode 2, 3 of just taking the first step and our general idea of how we got introduced into training. It's, I was afraid to go to the gym. I was afraid of what people would say. I was afraid of not knowing what I would do, what to do, of looking stupid, of looking like I didn't fit in, all these emotions and feelings, right? And I just kept telling myself that was going to happen. So then whenever I was like, oh, I should really go to the gym, I would then get nervous. I'd feel bad. I'd tell myself, okay, I could just actually go tomorrow. And then that felt good because I avoided that immediate feeling of, okay, I'm not feeling nervous anymore. But again, that was just a short term. And then every time that came up again, I just avoid it until something came, broke the cycle, and I stepped into the gym, right? And that for me was just going with a friend and be like, hey, just take me with you. I kind of just need to get out of the house and get into the gym in some capacity. And I just need to stop being in my own head. And I needed someone else to help me with that, right? And I think that's very normal, and that's okay. And then from there, you realize, hey, it's actually not that bad. But all these things, these thoughts that we've been telling ourselves that it is going to be bad or I'm going to get made fun of, that's what we think is going to happen. And again, that's ultimately what comes down to the theme of what we're discussing, is just that idea of holding ourselves back, right? Maybe we start telling ourselves things that aren't real, and then we start to believe it, right? Because that's just what that's what happens. That's repetition, right? And with repetition comes habit, and habits become the norm, and that's what it is, right? So maybe if we keep telling ourselves something bad is going to happen, whether it does or not, it's just going to affect us negatively, right? So I think that idea is, it's strange, it's tough, and it can make sense maybe when you break it down like this, right? But it's a lot harder to actually approach and to get out of. And I think, again, it just all comes down to just humans do not like discomfort. Right? And again, even if the decision that we're after or the action that we need to take leads to ultimately being beneficial in the end, right? Like going to the gym, that's going to be beneficial. We know that in the long term. We have all the research, but then, if we know that and it's easy to say and do, why isn't everyone fit? Why isn't everyone healthy? Because it's a lot harder than just saying that, right? And I think, again, a lot of it comes down to that idea of it's short-term safety and short-term gratification rather than doing the hard stuff, being uncomfortable for a little bit, and then experiencing that long-term gratification in the end, right? So again, this a lot of this comes, I'm explaining it more in like a biological standpoint. And of course, there's a lot more to it, and I'm not trying to minimize that in any way. It's more so just saying like, hey, how can we understand this in some regard and have somewhere to then understand it and then work from there and take some action, right? And for me, I just tend to like things in a biological standpoint, and it's helpful because, again, I come from a scientific background. It's like, cool, we have some evidence and some stuff that shows this is why things happen and why people think this way or do these things. So for me, if I understand something, I'm able to then have some more attachment to it in some level, and then I can understand what actions need to be taken in that sense. So hopefully, again, that can be helpful for that sense. But so with that idea, right, then if that's the case, how do we actually take action? How do we break the cycle? How do we do what we need to do, right? How do we get into the gym? How do we stop saying no to these foods that taste really good and make us feel good in the short term? Or maybe, how do we just do something and take action? I think, and it's again something we've talked about before, is just firstly being able to very clearly state what you want, what the quote unquote problem is at hand, what feelings you're feeling, and your goals in general. I think being very clear and specific of what that is extremely helpful, right? And that could just be writing it down. That could be talking to someone else about it. That could be talking to the camera about it, right? I think there's a lot of ways to do it, but having very clear intentions can give us a lot of clarity and direction, right? And that itself is hard to do. And that itself does take time. It takes effort. It takes being uncomfortable because you have to sit with your thoughts. And again, this is something I've been trying to do more recently, and it's hard. Like, I have to put myself in situations where I'm kind of forced to do so, right? So for example, with the new year starting up, I said, okay, let me be more conscious about setting goals and intentions for this year. And we talked about it on one podcast before as well, where I said, okay, I'm going to go to the coffee shop because from there I could just it's more special, it's more intimate. I'm able to remove myself from other environments and put myself in a spot where I have to actually think and do something. I only recently went to the coffee shop last weekend. So it was roughly 2-3 weeks after when I set that initial idea I should be going and just sitting down and enjoying a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and thinking about my goals. But it took me more time than I planned to. And it's again, it's very normal. And I'm kind of laughing now when I talk about it because I was just going to a coffee shop. But I kept telling myself, again, I was getting in my own head, and I started telling myself these things where, okay, it's cold. I don't want to be outside. I should probably get this work done. I should probably do this. And there wasn't much clarity, right? I was more so making excuses. I was getting in my own way. I was not prioritizing that idea of taking time for myself and setting those goals. And the underlying thing was because it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be fun. Okay, where am I struggling? Why am I struggling? And firstly, just admitting I am struggling. And it's again, I can understand where that comes from. And I think it's tough. And I think it's even more tough nowadays because there's so many things to distract us, right? To take us away from that short-term uncomfortableness. I probably should sit down and reflect on my goals, but let me just do some scrolling on Instagram first, and maybe I'll feel better afterwards. And then I spend 2 hours scrolling. Oops, got to do this now because I have to. It's a deadline, or I need to be somewhere and something. So I just maybe avoided what I wanted and actually needed to do for the past 2 hours, right? And it comes down to just a lot of excuses, honestly. And again, I'm not trying to minimize things. There are very much real stuff that comes up, and that needs to be addressed and just can't be avoided in itself. But is that actually true for you? And I think that's where that reflection really comes in, right? Because again, maybe that's true, or maybe you are really just getting in your own way and you are kind of holding yourself back. in that sense, right? So I think just taking that time to reflect, right, it can be very, very helpful. Think about the long-term outcomes, right? It's something I'd said in the last episode, or the 2025 episode rather, where something I'm thinking about for approaching life in 2025 was the idea and the notion of be, do, have versus have, do, have, be, do, right? So basically, like, do the stuff that I need to do, be the person I need to be so I can do the stuff I need to do to get to where I want and have the stuff that I want, rather than waiting until I have the stuff to then do the stuff to become the person I want to be, right? So that's, again, more so flipping that narrative in my own head, saying I need to actually do stuff. I can't just be waiting for a push from something random, someone to come save me, or whatever it might be that you're telling yourself. And I actually just need to go and do it and be the person I need to be. And I think a lot of us forget that we are the person we need to be. We just might not be doing those things up front, right? We have everything we need to within ourselves. It just, some people, again, it's easier for them. Some people it's harder. Some people take some more effort. But regardless, I think we have that initial starting point. But it comes down to, again, that reflection, really deciding, hey, what is it that we want? Where is it that we are struggling? What are the things we actually need to do to get to where we want to be? All right. So I think there's some action points there. And I think another thing that's helpful in this situation is kind of similar. It's just, for me, I always think, okay, what would Eric Helms do in this situation, right? and that's been really helpful because, as I'm starting to get ready for this bodybuilding competition at the end of the year, it's becoming a lot more real. I'm getting pretty scared, honestly, more and more as it's getting closer. But in the situation, I'm faced with uncertainty. Okay, Eric Helms, pro bodybuilder, very cool human being, great dude. What would he be doing in this situation? Would he do this? How would he think about this? What should I be doing? What would a pro bodybuilder do in this position? Right? If that's where I want to get at some point, think about what those actions are to get to that and reflect on that and think of it in the moment. Does this next immediate action I take get me on that path? Does it take me away from it? Is it just where I need to be right now? Because maybe I need to do something just to immediately, whatever it is, right? There's many things that go on, but just that thought itself of what should I be doing? Or what would someone that I want to be doing, that I want to be, do in this situation? Right? There's a common thing that's been going around on social media of putting in a script in Chat GPT where you're like, okay, what would they searching like what would the day in the life look like as a computer programmer? And it gives you a whole list of the stuff that they do. And for a lot of people, that gives a lot of clarity, right? So maybe that's something there you can start with. Say like, okay, what would this person do? What would X position do in this situation? What does their life look like? What should I be doing, right? And getting something to start, to taking that first step. So I think that's essentially what comes down to it, right? Is taking that first step, acknowledging that it's all on you. It really is. And again, there are some other things to consider, but I think sitting with those thoughts and first discussing is, okay, is there stuff that I could be doing better? Am I holding myself back? Is there somewhere where I can improve? I think really doing that, it can be helpful. And I think, to give more example of how I'm navigating this right now. Like I said, bodybuilding competition's coming up at the end of the year. Again, it's still a ways away, but it's one of those things where you have to respect it. You have to be in a good position because it's got to be tough. You want to be as prepared as you can, though you'll never be fully prepared. And that's kind of where I am struggling. I keep telling myself that I need to be at this position before I start, or I need to have X amount of muscularity or leanness before I am ever consider myself a bodybuilder. But what that's done for me the past couple of years is I just keep avoiding actually doing it because I keep thinking I basically get into the thought where I'll never be muscular enough because you can always put on more muscle. And while that may be true, you can always put on some more muscle. That shouldn't be stopping me from actually doing a competition, right? Because I do need to get that experience. I do need to figure out, what it's like, get that skill, practice that skill, and just kind of just do it, right? And I think that's why even now, because it's again becoming more real, it's becoming a little bit more scary. Right? So like what's happening right now in the past week is I had a call with Eric, and he was like, "Okay, cool, we're gonna do this little mini cut before we start." Just be in a good position, but send me pictures and some posing to see where you're at, and then from there we have a better indication of where we need to go. And man, I'm struggling to take that video and that picture because I keep thinking, maybe I could do it tomorrow, where maybe I'll have a new little weigh-in, or maybe I'll just next week will be a better time to do it because I'm just afraid to give it to him and to see what he thinks. Though that doesn't make sense because that's what I'm intentionally trying to do, is get information and get more guidance of where I need to be. right? So even as I'm talking to it now, it's like, okay, I can see where the fault maybe lies, and it's very much with my thinking. So how can I break that, right? And I think what I've been telling myself is, what's the best scenario that could happen in this situation? I could send him the pictures, the video, and he'd be like, dude, you're in a great position. We actually don't need to do this mini cut. We can take another 7 or 8 weeks rather outside of dieting and then start prep in a good position. Like, that's awesome. And he could say some really nice things. And I would ride that high forever, because if Eric Helms says it, I'm like, that's so cool. And it's important to me, right? Or quote unquote worst case scenario is like, hey, we got to start prep now. So you're going to be dieting for a while. But quote unquote worst case scenario, that's still pretty good, because that just means, hey, I'm going to get closer to the goal because I got some direction, got some guidance. I faced that initial resistance and that fear that I'm facing, and now I have, I know where I need to know where I need to go and know what I need to do. Right. So I think that's something that's very recent in my experience. And that's why I think all these things, again, have been kind of coming up and being just things that I'm thinking about. Right. I think things that people always think about, maybe not again specifically to bodybuilding itself, or just stepping into the gym or staying consistent with their New Year's resolutions. Because this is the time now where people just start to fall off because they just they aren't doing it, right? Or maybe they didn't take the time early on to just really set the precedent of, hey, this is important to me. This is why it's important to me. Here's my plan of doing it. Here's my plan B if I don't, I'm not able to stick with it. And also here's how I'm being flexible, right? All these things that taking some time early on to plan about can be helpful with sticking to the goal. Right? We're just thinking about the short-term gratification rather than long-term. And not to say that if you're in that position now that, hey, you already failed, wait till next year. It's more, you can always start up again, right? Take a sidestep. Think about where you can be improving, right? Use this time to reflect again and kind of restart that process, or just kind of reassess, right? It's not even restarting. It's just getting more direction. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. That's what this filler episode's about this time around. But yeah, I think summarize again, it just, sometimes we're sending, we're the ones that are holding ourselves back. So whether or not that's true, I think again, take some time to really think about that. And if it is, let's create a plan, right? Think about what you can be doing. Do that inner work. Start with a reflection. Start on taking some action of where you can improve. Reach out for help if you need help, right? And to where you think that is appropriate to do so. And essentially just, think about what that looks like. What would someone in the shoes I want to be in be doing in this situation? How can I improve? What would they be doing? How can I break this cycle, right? And first, acknowledging that there is a cycle that's happening and I'm avoiding certain things. How do I do those things? How do I make that barrier of entry very easy to break through, right? So yeah, I think another thing to leave you with is another Marlon Craft quote. So again, one of my favorite artists, really cool CD here, if you can see it on the video if you're watching it. But yeah, it was one of his songs called Marathon. Fantastic song overall. But one of the quotes that really stuck with me and kind of resonates, and something that I always remind myself of and think about specifically in this situation, is very summarized. This is kind of end part, but he says, "You carry on with the baggage till you realize you're the pilot." And that's it, man. It's on you. You're in the driver's seat. You have the control. Let's make things happen. Let's take some action. So as always, thanks for listening. We appreciate you. Thanks for being you, and we'll catch you in the next episode.